And I think we're live. Okay. Believe we're live. Hope we are. August 26th, 2024. We're going to talk about personal anchors today. Okay. So a few people have asked me questions about personal anchors recently. And I do cover it in my anchors course, talking about what personal anchors are and what the definition is. But what I'm going to do is go over what it is really quickly, and then a few different options, because there's actually a few different ways to personal anchor yourself into the wall, and then also some considerations for multi-pitching and how that all works. Okay, so a personal anchor, to give you some concepts. So if we're talking about single pitch sport climbing, generally a personal anchor is used when you're cleaning a route. So this is when you're trying to take off all the gear. If I grab a couple quick draws. I'm going to show you the most common scenario first, and then we can start to talk about kind of different situations afterwards, okay? So most common scenario. Someone has built the anchor like this, and then you get to the top, and your goal is to take off all this equipment. So you need to somehow unweight the rope so that you can remove these quick draws. Okay, so that is our goal. Now, the principles of a personal anchor are actually really similar to the principles of an anchor, except you have a little bit more leniency because you're supervising this the whole time and you're going to be right beside it. So it's not going to be there for a really long time. There's some common ways and some uncommon ways to do this. One of the common ways, I wonder if there's anything I can stand on here. One of the common ways to do this is to actually, I'll tell you actually how I was taught and learned, and then work into where I'm at now. So at first I was taught you can just use a sling or two slings. And what you want to do is clip them into both bolts. So no matter what your personal anchor system, you want to make it redundant, meaning that if one of these bolts fails, then you're still good on the other bolt. So there's a bunch of different ways you can imagine to get your harness attached to these bolts. One pretty common way that I was taught at first when I started climbing was you get a sling, boom, and you girth hitch the sling around your belay loop. So a girth hitch, if you don't know, is like a really, really simple hitch where you just, if you have a fixed sling in a loop, you lay it over something and then you pull the loop through itself. So it's a really simple hitch. So you're going to do that, and you can do this either around the belay loop, which is the colored loop going through two fixed points, or sometimes people push it through both fixed points. The benefit of pushing it through both fixed points is it leaves your belay loop a little more free, which in a multi-pitch or certain scenarios might be better off. Boom. So I'm going to girth hitch it through here. Now this is a 120 sling, so you can see it's quite far. Oh, my computer's yelling at me. It thinks that I'm leaving. It's like Netflix where it's like, are you still watching? But it says like, are you still in this call? Okay, so I have my my sling girth hitched around my belay loop. Now, this is quite far, and what I want to do is have it under tension. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to tie a knot in the sling to make it have a shelf or a little spot here that I can choose which size I want. So now I have my sling here, and what I can do is I can clip a locker into the sling, and then I can clip that into one of the bolts and lock it. So this is kind of what I was taught at first. You can clip that into one of those slings and lock it. And now what we want is we want this sling to either be attached to this other bolt or attach ourselves to the second bolt some way. So because we're already attached to this one, we can either use a different quick draw or we can take off that quick draw. Well, one way to do this would be to attach a quick draw and then attach it to ourselves. Another way would be to attach a quick draw, then clip it in that sling as well. So what we want to do here, I'm going to take off the actual ropes for a moment just to show you just the personal anchor. You wouldn't do this in real life like this, but I just want to show you. So in this scenario, if this bolt was to fail or this carabiner was to fail, probably won't happen, but if it was to fail, then you have the backup here of the quick draw. What you want to do is you don't want to shock load a sling too much, mostly for your own body. Because if you shock load a sling, then it's going to create a ton of force on your body. It doesn't have to stretch like a rope does. But this is a totally legit and safe way. And this is how I was first taught how to personal anchor. Okay. Now we're going to put it on. So simulating a top rope once again. I'm going to take this off. And actually, to be fair, I only had a 60-centimeter nylon sling when I first started climbing. So that was kind of my personal anchor. I'd put in the 60-centimeter nylon sling and be really close to the anchor. And then I would use quick draws to attach myself to the other. So that's how I used to do it. And at first, that's how I did it. And then I learned, and you'll probably go through this learning phase yourself if you haven't already, like, oh, they actually make specific systems for personal anchoring. So literally for what I just showed, because you can see, depending on where you are at, you might actually, I'm just going to throw this down here for now. You might actually want different lengths depending on where you're at in relationship to the anchor. Because sometimes the ledge is the anchor's at your waist, sometimes the anchor's at your eyes, whatever. So they make these things, and this is called a personal anchor system. So this is like a specially made thing that's just a bunch of fixed loops, like belay loops, clipped together. And same thing there, you'd either girth hitch this around your belay loop or around the two fixed points. And now you get to choose where you go. So you'd have a locker attached to this, and you could choose, you know, which loop you'd want to clip in. So if I only need to go this far, like in this case, I would only go there. Say it was higher up, then I would drop it to the last loop and clip it there, boom, and so on and so forth. This is actually the same one I bought, I think, in 2016. I used this a few times, and I just found it really annoying, honestly, to keep on my harness. Most people will clip these, so they'll have the end, and they'll clip it to another one, and then they'll put it underneath all their quick draws and have it there. Another way you might see people wearing these, super weird, is they'll put it between their legs and clip it to the back. I forget what they call it, like a happy anchor or something. But it's super awkward in my opinion, because you have to unclip it, drop it, and then reach below your legs and clip it on. I've never seen any experienced, like very experienced climber do that. It's kind of a newbie thing to do. But I didn't like this just because of how much space it takes up. That being said, let me show you kind of how it works one more time in this scenario. One thing you could do here, and I think this is how they recommend it, depending, because Black Diamond sells their own one of these, Petzl sells their own. You can clip it into one bolt, lock it, and then you can use a non-locker or locker to clip it into the next one. Boom. And once again, I'm going to take off these quick draws just to show you one more time. Not because that's the sequence that we do, just to show you in isolation. So you would have a locked carabiner and a non-locker there. Some people will also use a quick draw, just like I did on the last, and clip it in. So that's another way to personal anchor. One that I didn't like too much just because I didn't like carrying up this bundle of stuff. So I'll tell you kind of what I graduated into and what I pretty much do all the time now. Take this off. So after a while, I started learning that a lot of people go up and they just use quick draws. So they just use quick draws to attach them. Trying to look for something I can stand on in here. So once you climb up to the anchor, what I do usually in sport climbing is I'll just climb up, and then when I'm cleaning, I'll just try and get my hips as high up as I can. I'll say take, and then I sit back on the rope, and then I'll grab quick draws. Because I'm cleaning the route, I probably grabbed a bunch of quick draws on the way up, and I'll either clip 1 to 1 quick draw and clip it to my harness, and 1 to another quick draw and clip it to my harness. And then I say slack, and then they let the slack on. And now I'm on 2 points, and the whole system is just extended. I don't know how well you guys can see this, but basically it's 2 quick draws clipped together on either side. The important thing here, and this is really important, is that these quick draws are opposite and opposed on my belay loop so that they don't accidentally come undone. I actually watched a video the other day of someone telling a story of how if the quick draws get twisted around a little bit when you're setting it up like this, they can unclip themselves. Super rare, but it can happen. So that's why having 1 on either bolt and opposite and opposed mitigates for, even if 1 unclips, you have another one there. I understand some people wouldn't be comfortable with this because you're using all non-lockers, yada, yada, yada. But I'm pretty comfortable with it, and it's common practice amongst a bunch of people that I climb with. And then I'm going to show you another way I do this. Actually, I don't know if I can get a close-up on these. So basically what I do is I'll clip them to the 2 quick draws that are already there. And then if this was my belay loop, I would have it clipped into my belay loop, opposite and opposed like that. So you can see there's gates on the outside of both. Hopefully that makes sense. Okay, and then if I don't have this fancy thing to stand on, but it's this length, one thing I often bring up these days is 2 alpine draws. And this is actually really helpful for these scenarios. So I can just clip it in there, extend the alpine draw, clip it to my belay loop, and then do that again. So remember, this is all for single pitch. Bam. And once again, I'm just making sure that these gates are opposite and opposed. It's kind of hard sometimes to get both under tension. Like you can see even here, this one's under tension, this one's kind of loose. And then if I was over here, opposite, this one's under tension, this one's kind of loose. So unless you're perfectly oriented or if there's offset bolts, it can get a little weird. But generally it's not uncommon, and it's pretty common to be taught that it doesn't matter if you have equalization when personal anchoring, as long as you have a backup if one fails. And just, have a think. And then the last one I want to show you that I'm actually experimenting with now, mostly honestly because I'm teaching so many new people single pitch sport climbing skills, I thought I should try this one out. Is this. So Petzl makes this what's it called? I think it's called Adjust. Petzl Adjust. Same thing. You would just girth hitch it around your belay loop. It's kind of cool though. Like the concept's really neat. I don't know how practical it is for me just because I have my own systems and stuff like that, but I'm trying to not to be a old dog who doesn't learn new tricks. I'm trying to try new things out. And this is really cool. So this one you'd have to clip. It's only one device, so you'd have to clip it to something that is already redundant. So in this scenario where you have these 2 draws, what I would do is I would clip it to the 2 draws and lock it. And then the great thing about this is rather than having to choose the loop like on the this one, we have to kind of figure out what length it is and make the adjustment. This one, you just clip it in at like the max length, and then you just pull it tight, and then it automatically cinches itself shut. So that's pretty great. The redundancy, as I said, would have to be built into the system. but usually it's pretty easy to use a quick draw or extend a couple quick draws just to back up whichever bolt you're on, even if they're offset. Yeah, I want to mess around with this. I want to try and take it up on a multi-pitch and see how it works there. The one thing that I always avoided this because it sounded super annoying was just getting it on my harness. Because with the other ones, I understand how to put it on the harness easily and stow it away so it's not in my way. But this one, it was like if I clip it here, it's typically how you clip a personal anchor. This is going to dangle around a bunch, which sucks. And then if I have it fully extended, like I said, I haven't worked out exactly how to play with this yet. If I have it fully extended, this loop is way too big. But then I saw someone do this where they just put a slip knot in the middle. So they twist it once, pull a bite through, and then they clip the quick draw in it, and then put it on their harness, and then through all their quick draws around. And then when they go to take it off, it's pretty great. When they go to take it off, they unclip it and then they pull it and it all comes undone. I was like, oh wow, that's awesome. But honestly, I've only taken it out once and really tried. But when I did it, it got bunked around a little bit and it wasn't as smooth as I was hoping. So I want to play around with this one a little bit more. The other thing you can do with this, if you're on a multi-pitch, you can extend your rappel using a clove hitch. So you still have this as a personal anchor, which we'll get into in a second here. The last thing I want to show is a personal anchor for multi-pitching. I know we usually talk about single pitch stuff, but I think it's important just for the context of this scenario to explain how I commonly, and a lot of my guiding buddies and just friends who multi-pitch a lot, commonly use this when they're moving up a multi-pitch climb. So typically when you're moving up a multi-pitch climb, you don't use quick draw anchors, first of all, just a no bueno when you're multi-pitch climbing. You pretty much always are going to build an anchor. So really quickly, just going to do that with my sling. So here's just like a typical thing I would do, multi-pitching, get up, bang, bang. I know the direction of load is going to be about that way. Well, the first thing I do, actually, just to make it super realistic, is just rack it up, similar to how I would have it. I would climb up, I'd get to the anchor. The first thing I usually do is, unless it's super safe, but usually I will just clip in a quick draw, clip in the rope. That way I'm safe if I do slip or fall or whatever. And then I'll just quickly build an anchor. Doesn't take long at all, especially if you have your systems dialed. It's called a transition. And if you can get these really fast, then it makes your multi-pitch day way, way quicker. Okay, so boom, boom. I'm going to clip that in there, that in there. Direction of load's this way. Simple one. If you took the anchor course, you'll know this, is I'll just tie a figure 8 on a bite. Boom, boom. This point here where it all comes together and is redundant is called the master point. And then this is commonly how you would personal anchor in a multi-pitch scenario, is you would tie a clove hitch, which I'm not even going to teach a clove hitch in this lesson. It'd be too hard to do with the camera distance. But you tie a clove hitch, which is an adjustable hitch, so you can choose your length. And then you grab a locker, lock it into the master point, adjust the length to your need. If I was standing right here, I would make it quite short because obviously I'm right at the master point. And then I would test it. Boom, test is great. And then I say secure, and they would take me off the way. So if we look at this now, like when you're multi-pitching, you see the personal anchor is totally different. Like you're just using a clove hitch on a locker on a master point. And one of the reasons we can do this in a multi-pitch is because we don't have to untie when you're cleaning. Sometimes you do have to untie at some point when you're cleaning. Whereas in a multi-pitch, you're staying tied in and you're just swapping leads and the next person's going up. So you can use the rope as your personal anchor. Some people still use personal anchors when they're multi-pitching. They find it easier. There's pros and cons to that, but I definitely find myself very often using the clove hitch as a personal anchor. So that's the basics on personal anchoring. As I said, make sure it's redundant. Equalization, for whatever reason, people don't care as much about that. You're not really seeing as many forces. That's probably a big part of it, and it's semi-supervised. Yeah, I'll show you guys a cool anchor if you've watched to this point for multi-pitching. That actually the legendary Alex Honnold shared in a climbing magazine a couple of years ago, or maybe it was last year, and Alpine Savvy, if you follow that guy, he's another person who puts out a lot of content on anchors and ropes and stuff like that. He actually shared, I saw he had an article on this recently, and I tried this anchor last year, and it was actually pretty handy for like a fast multi-pitch, because that was what the article was about. Okay, so here's how you do it. I need my belay device to actually show you guys how this works. Okay. So this is how I would do this, and I'll zoom in a little bit just so you guys can see. So this one's going to be kind of techie, so it's important to be able to see it. Okay. Keep an eye on the camera. Hopefully you can see this well. Okay, so I climb up, and this is how you do this is one way to do a fast anchor when you're multi-pitching. Just one way to do a really quick anchor when you're multi-pitching. So I'd climb up. If I'm stable enough, I don't even throw in a quick draw. I'll just throw in a locker here, and then I throw a clove hitch. Bam. So this is actually my, oh, that's not a good clove hitch at all. Reset. So I get up to the anchor, I put a locker in, and then I'm going to tie a clove hitch, clip it in, get myself as snug as I need to, make sure I lock that. And then I'm going to take about a loop like that, just so I know I have enough for what I'm going to do next. I'm going to do another clove hitch in here. Yeah, I'll do it with this one. Boom. I got the locker in. I'm going to throw another clove hitch in here. Bang, bang. Lock it up. So now I got this V between two clove hitches, and then you can tie either a figure eight, or in this case, we'll do a figure eight right in the middle of those two. Then I get my belay device. You can also use a tube style device. What I like doing is setting up my belay device ready to receive the rope. So in this case, I'd be using a gree-gree. I'm going to face it this way. And then what I would do is I'd pull up the rope as I normally do. If you've never done a multi-pitch, this is the next step. I like getting it all set up. And then I pull up the rope so I get to my buddy, throw in the rope, making sure that it's oriented in the correct direction, double check all my systems, and then I say on belay, and my buddy can start climbing. And then when he gets to me, I can switch this belay. If he's swapping leads, I can switch this belay over to myself. Bang, really quickly and easily. Obviously, he would personal anchor before I take the whole belay off. It's a big part of it. But then he would start climbing, and then when he sets up his anchor and he gets secure, then I can take this off. And when it's time to take off the anchor entirely, you can imagine this thing is pretty damn easy to recover because there's not actually any material other than 2 lockers in this. So once he has me on belay and I see this is tight and he yells down, I can just take this off. Because this is a hitch, it's just going to come undone immediately. Take out my knot. Remember, I'm on belay, so he'll be pulling in the rope nice and snug. Take out this one because it's a clove hitch. It comes out super easy. 1, 2. Obviously, if this is real, this rope would be going up. Then it's game on. So that's kind of really quick. We just use clove hitches a lot for personal anchors in multi-pitching. And that's just a cool anchor system that you can do with it. So hopefully this answers any questions you have about personal anchors. I wish it was simple, like this is how everyone personal anchors, but hopefully now you understand that you can use a sling. You can use a sling with knots tied in it. You can use one of these things, and I think they call them personal anchor systems. Or you can use some of these fancy ones, like this is the Petzl Adjust, but I think BD tried to make one and people try to make them, but I personally just rock the quick draws when I'm sport climbing these days. Yeah, maybe I'll change that, but that's just what I'm doing now. And now you know my whole history of personal anchors. So, and some of the reasons that I bring up the alpine draws and what I do on multi-pitches. So one big thing I guess I could mention, since we're talking about this, is when you're coming down from a multi-pitch, and this is like a lesson in itself. But one time where you're personal anchoring a lot is when you're coming down from multi-pitches. So you would be rappelling, and then when you get to the next anchor, you need to anchor yourself in before coming off the rappel. So in that scenario, you kind of have to set up a little bit of a unique personal anchor, but that can be another lesson because you need to have an extended rappel and a personal anchor. So descents from multi-pitches is its own beast, and we will talk about that some other time. But yeah, there you go. Thanks for coming. Peace.